Greetings, webheads, and welcome to episode 4 of Witty Banter, yet another Marvel Crisis Protocol podcast. I'm Patrick.
I'm Alex.
John Paul.
David.
We are here to help you get better at and have more fun with your Crisis Protocol. So, since we've last gotten together, we have had a couple of new Patreons that we wanted to say thank you to. We want to say thank you to Tom. And we want to say thank you to Adam, both for joining as Spider Friends. The fact that they're locals and supporting us, we doubly appreciate that. So thank you both for your support and for joining up. If you want to join those great American heroes, you can go to patreon.com/wittybantercast, and you can support what we're doing at either the $1 or the $5 level. You get a number of benefits for that, but one of those benefits you're going to find out at the next episode. Guys, what are we talking about?
Giveaway.
Yeah.
What are we giving? We're giving something away. What are we giving away?
Your choice of X-Men box.
That's right. So for those of you who are on the edge of your seat waiting for a free Shadow King, we got you settled.
He could be in your next list.
That's right. You could be
We'll even dojo the list for you.
For Shadow King? Oh my god. I don't even know what to do with that.
Boy, you are really setting us up to fail, I feel like, Alex.
Yeah.
Instant S tier list.
No. It's not a failure when you
We're
say
just
the
gonna-
dojo starts with
It's
no
gonna be all
Shadow
traps.
King.
It's gonna be all traps.
Your first thing to change in your list, drop Shadow King.
Trap House hasn't seen anything yet. Behold the Shadow King.
So, to get in on all this fun, if you are a member of the Patreon, at the $1 level, you get an entry. At the $5 level, you get 2 entries. But in addition to that, how else can they join?
Give us a review and
Yeah.
screenshot it and send it to us.
That's right. We want reviews. So go to your podcast catcher of choice. Leave us a review. 1 star, 3 star, 5 star, whatever you think is the most appropriate. We want you to be honest. We're not here to buy your praise. We're just here to buy your engagement. So leave us a review. Send it to us on any of the socials, Witty Bantercast or wittybantercast@gmail.com. You will get another entry. Next time you're hearing the podcast, we will tell you who's won. So now's the time. Get on it, webheads. So since last time, we have had some data points on how the game has changed. There was a little thing called the Big Beef Beatdown. Tell us about that.
What Alex can allow?
So it was a new tournament that we did this year on Omaha. And it was a standard event. We played the first undefeated. Congratulations, Aaron Franklin.
You bastard.
I know, right?
He took it again. One of these days, we'll keep a tournament, a local tournament, home.
Yeah, one of these days.
It's not gonna happen, but one of these days it will.
Yeah, ironically, given the fact that it was actually at a basketball court that I don't believe has been renovated since 1965, we can actually talk about it being home court advantage. But
We'll never win it. It's okay.
Well, Aaron's a good player. He played Hellfire, so
Yeah,
Oh,
Aaron's a
exactly.
fantastic player.
yeah.
that'll do it.
And it was late, like kind of last minute. I think there was like a month or something.
Yeah, we had a month notice.
So I mean, we had a good turnout.
23 people after drops. I was very pleased.
Yeah.
But this was also really the first kind of big tournament event that at least we've seen that has been post CGR nerf and post release of all of the New Mutant boxes.
Yep.
So we were all there. We all played. What did you guys think in terms of how did the game feel different now that we've kind of been in this next phase of the game?
Tom was there popping that X-Men cherry.
He was.
He was.
He was. He rolled Professor X out.
Yeah.
Did
Wheeled
you-
him out.
Yep, he wheeled him out.
Literally
He
wheeled
was
him out.
cuddling under that lap blanket with him. He was ready.
So one of the things I know we talked about when we talked about the CGR nerf was, all right, how big of a deal was it? Was it too much? Was it not enough? So what did we see from Frank in the most recent tournament that we had?
Well, being the TO, I was surprised like legitimately surprised that there was not a single CGR.
And there were 23 entrants.
24 if you include my list as the ringer, but 23 people, no CGR.
Including 2 Guardians?
2 Guardians, yeah.
Okay.
At least 2 Guardians.
Yeah.
I think there
You
were
and
2.
somebody else, right?
Yep.
Seagar, I think.
So, is that a surprise? Do we think that that's evidence that the CGR nerf was overtuned?
I'm honestly surprised. I personally am surprised because there are still ways of playing him and getting him to do things, and nobody did it. I was a little surprised. I wasn't expecting him to be like he was at LVO. I think I don't remember the statistics with LVO, but there was a lot of CGR there. But I was expecting, out of 20, we'll just say 24 to round up for simple math. I expected like one out of 24. That just seemed really low.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it's usually a sign of usually when something gets nerfed, it just kind of falls off, and then people come back to it after they.
Yeah. It's not the same.
Yeah.
And then they come back.
Some people kind of come around.
Yeah. That's literally every model that's been nerfed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you had that period right after the nerf where everybody just...
Where everybody doesn't want to play them and just kind of go around. And the X-Men, you got the new hotness.
There weren't many X-Men,
But
though.
yeah, but I mean, it was literally on release, like the weekend it came
the
out.
day after.
Yeah.
So, I know Tom rolled out with Professor Xavier, and I think he was the only one that actually played Professor X. Am I remembering that right?
Yes.
So, how about the rest of the new characters? How many Shadow Kings did we see?
No, nobody played Shadow
Oh,
King.
that's significantly disappointing.
I know.
I played against X-Force with Bishop and Shadowcat, maybe?
I played Bishop, and Nightcrawler, and I played at least one other character that had Bishop and Nightcrawler.
Me.
Oh yeah, that was
Okay.
I did get to see my opponent use the X-Force tactics card, the one where you get to move.
Preserve the dream.
Yeah, preserve the dream.
How'd that play?
So I played around it most of the game because since you have to attack with a higher threat, attacking a lower threat, I just basically waited until I could be like, okay, well, I just have my lower threat or equal threat attack, and then he couldn't. There was a bunch of times where he just couldn't play it when he wanted to play it. I feel like that a savvy opponent is going to realize that they can manipulate that way.
Absolutely.
But it's not.
It becomes like a deception, though, right?
It does, yeah. You're trying to plan all these
play
things.
around it, and you might make suboptimal choices to play around it.
Yeah.
And then they don't even have to play the card. You just influence how they play, just having the card face up.
Well, in the mental gymnastics of trying to figure out okay, maybe I need to do it here, or if you somehow at some point forget, and then you're like, oh, well, this just caught me.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm just gonna go and have them use the card.
Yeah, I mean,
Get
you probably do.
I mean, it probably depends on the matchup too, right? Like if you're running kind of identical threat lineups, you could probably play around it pretty well.
Yeah. And I mean, it's got its place. One, it's another X-Force card, so you have 1.5 tactics cards now.
The movement's good. Movement's always good.
It's good. And it can give you some cool tricks. Move Cable into range. Move your taunters into range.
Yeah.
Get Psylocke into martial artist range.
You can do some cool.
You can do some interesting things. It's what did you say it was, JP?
I can't remember exactly how I phrased it, but it's basically a jank ass Avengers
Assemble,
assemble.
Yeah.
Like Avengers assemble with extra steps.
That's right. That's
Extra
right.
steps.
It's like slavery, but with extra steps.
Yeah.
So if Cosmic Ghost Rider isn't the big bad anymore, what ended up being really good? I mean, at least from what you guys saw, if Guardians with CGR is kind of knocked off the obvious best thing out there now, what's going to take its place? Or at least, what do we think might be taking its place from what we saw at the tournament last weekend?
If we're basing it off of attrition style, like Guardians was, I think Killconda. Killconda's pretty high up there. If we're just talking game meta, in my opinion, Hellfire is definitely up there now. I think they took the top spot. possibly tied with Web Warriors.
They took Franklin had
He had Avengers
Hellfire Avengers.
Yep.
And then Kenny got second with Criminal
Criminal
Syndicate,
Syndicate.
Hellfire.
too. Yeah.
Oh, he had Hellfire too?
Yes.
I didn't know he had Hellfire.
So it was both split lists with Hellfire.
So Hellfire,
Yeah, and Landon
basically
played Hellfire in
And he got
third.
Third or fourth, yeah.
Third or
yeah,
fourth.
third or fourth.
Okay, so it was just a lot of Hellfire.
There's a lot of Hellfire.
Quebec
And
was the
then-
only one who showed up with webs, though.
Yeah,
They were
I
not
was-
as well represented.
They weren't.
Webs was on my short list. I was gonna play Webs. I really did think about it, but
What'd you end up
I decided to bust out the combo because
Complications.
I mean, why not?
Yeah.
It's fun. And people keep trying to come for my spot on Longshanks, so I gotta keep like playing games so that I can keep it behind. Well, it actually bumps me up. I'm fourth now.
Nice.
Yeah.
One tournament bumped you up to
bumped
fourth.
somebody
That's
out
so funny.
out of the top 5 too.
Feels like that says more about convocation than anything else.
Yeah, I don't
Hey,
know.
A place is a place.
I'm hanging on to my
100%.
spot. I'm hanging on to
100%.
it.
Well, being one of the 2 Guardians players at the tournament who wasn't running CGR, I will say that I didn't get any reps with CGR after the nerf, not one, so I didn't feel comfortable bringing him. I didn't feel comfortable playing him, and therefore I didn't want to bring him.
That's fair.
10 characters is pretty tight. I could have just had him on his tray looking mean, but
Well, you replaced him with Thanos, didn't you? Or
no, I had
who did you
Thanos
replace him
before.
with?
Yeah.
I rejigged my roster quite a bit from my LDO roster. I think I swapped out 3 or 4 characters.
Gotcha. Okay.
Do you add Drax?
I did Drax, yeah.
Okay.
I swapped Groot for Drax, but basically, going back to 2 things you said, the CGR thing,
Yep,
and the what's replacing. So the CGR thing, like I said, just didn't have reps, didn't feel comfortable bringing him. He might be okay. I don't know. No data. Second thing, Thanos.
Yeah.
Thanos with Desecree is still really good.
Yeah.
For attrition.
It's super good.
So, okay, so my LVO roster did not have Nebula because I didn't like having Nebula and CGR in the same list.
Yeah, makes
Or
sense.
in the same 10.
2 no scory, killy. It's
You're
just a bit much.
Basically pushing all your chips into the middle,
Yeah.
saying, I'm going to table you.
Yes.
Because there's no way you're scoring anything that game.
I got 2 models that could score this whole game.
Yeah.
So, with CGR out, my Bay Nebula's back in because she's a fucking hoss.
Especially with Desecree.
My God, she's
She's-
ridiculous.
She's stupid with Desecree. Just
So did it change the way? So how did it change the way you play your Guardians roster now that you don't have CGR pulling in?
I think they are not as good. I mean, they aren't. Guardians really aren't good on Ds anyway, but I think they're less good on Ds now. I mean, aside from Spider Portals, because CGR is dog shit on Spider Portals, but like being able to like take center, move around the map easily, double tap and pull, like he can affect the board really well, even if he can't score now. If you're not running him, I don't know. There's not a good replacement for him. Thanos isn't very good on Ds, so I don't know. I don't know what Guardians does on Ds. I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, maybe it's like switching to like speed hitters like Gamora and
Yeah, I mean she's
Agent
long mover.
Venom.
She can hop around. I think maybe Rhino Splash, but I don't know.
I don't hate a Rhino Splash.
Like,
the problem with Rhino is he's gonna derp damage, right?
well,
most of the
that's
time.
the thing is if you give him a winging it.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
it definitely
Like it
improves
turns
odds.
on that robbery a lot quicker, and sometimes you just have to like make it so that you become the mouse, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
if they go up on Extracts and just play Pussyfoot, and you're like trying to chase him around a D, it sucks. If you can break parity somehow, i.e. Rhino, would be the easiest way. I mean, you just run around and have them chase you, and like he's just good on a D.
Yeah.
He throws big things, so webs don't like big things thrown into him. Neither does
Hellfire.
Some Hellfire.
Yeah.
Who honestly likes big things being thrown in them, though, to be honest? There's not too many things out there. Excluding Brace.
Yeah. I don't know.
So,
Web data though.
so how does the game feel different? Do we feel like it's better, worse, different? I mean, does it feel demonstrably different than it did, say, 3-4 weeks ago?
Being the ringer and being the TO, I feel as though it's in a better place overall because nobody has to worry about walking up to their CGR or as often.
Well, and I think a lot of the other rosters that normally you don't see
They'll come out a little bit more.
like there was at least 2 defenders.
Yeah,
They're
there
double
were 2
defenders?
defenders. Yep.
And then there
was Convocation.
There was Convocation. There was
X-Force. There was X-Men. There was
Winter
Winter
Guard.
Guard. There was Cabal. Like there was, I think the affiliation.
Midnight Suns.
Yeah, the affiliation list was way more diverse. I'd rather it just like from my situation and like if I were going to an event, I'd rather walk up to a table and be like, "Oh, this is gonna be a tough one because I have to play really tight and play a scory game," instead of, "Oh, I really hope my opponent rolls really bad," and I hate those kinds of games because I'd rather lose to playing the game than losing or winning because of the dice. It's a dice game, I get that, and it's part of the game, but I'd rather my opponent have a good time rolling good, decent dice, and I'm rolling good, decent dice too in playing the game.
It just feels like the game is at the more likely you are if you're going to play 5 rounds to get 5 different affiliations you play against. It feels like the more likely you are to be in that circumstance, the healthier the game is, as opposed to CGR Guardians. Oh, another CGR Guardians. Oh, hey, look, it's another CGR Guardians. And that kind of felt like we were drifting in that direction.
I just want to say Aaron Franklin's a coward for not bringing Sentinels.
Yeah. Are you gonna call him out? Are you gonna?
I just did.
No, because he did it on TTS.
I know. I'm just
joking. Are you calling him out?
I'm willing to call.
No, I mean that's just shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
I'm willing to call everybody out as cowards for playing Sentinels,
he
but
would
that's
still
a me
probably
thing.
smash the Sentinels, and you're just like, what?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other kind of broader thoughts post sort of our first tournament in terms of what we learned or where we think the game is?
So you're just gonna see a lot of Bill and Rhino.
Yeah.
You're gonna
That's
see
it.
a lot of Bill and
Bill
Cat.
and Rhino.
Cat.
It's gonna be Wakanda with Bill and Rhino. It's gonna be Hellfire with Bill and Rhino. Where you're gonna see Webs.
With Rhino, probably.
Maybe. I think they might run Bill over Rhino. Rhino's kind of weird.
You're gonna see one of them. Not both.
you're gonna-
You'll see
of,
one of them.
You have a lot of overlap between Rhino and Spider Woman.
Yeah.
Which is
Which
weird
is-
to think, but I think you're
Yeah.
right.
I think you're right, but I think I'd rather Rhino over Spider Woman.
No, in webs? No, you take Spider Woman every time, all the time. Spider Woman's so good.
I mean, it gives you another source for webbed up, and it gives her.
Oh yeah, and she's got
She can
Venom
participate in
Blast.
the webbed up
I mean,
gangbang.
Yeah,
Yeah, and she's
yeah, you're probably right.
And have an interrogate at the end of it.
I mean, I'm not gonna poo-poo anybody for bringing Rhino with robbery because it's just
It's just good.
it's good.
like
It's good.
broke. But I mean, when you're competing with affiliated characters, I don't know if there's a right answer. There's probably an optimization there, but I think they're both fine. But I would suspect that Spider Woman's probably
In
more,
webs,
Overall,
more of
in
a
webs,
pick
yeah,
in,
more
in
likely.
webs specifically. But
All right. So, when we first started, we had teased that we were going to have not just some crunchy talk about the game itself, but we're going to talk more about the hobby in general. And 4 episodes in, I think it's kind of time we at least dive into that a little bit. So,
I mean, we had a lot of things go on the first 3 episodes.
We did.
So.
yeah.
we did. I mean, I'm not blaming us. I mean, we're awesome. But I think it is time. I
We're
think it is.
definitely not cobbling this together. Sticks and whatever.
Oh, we made it up to sticks. Made it past the rocks. All right.
We're just working with what we got.
hey, rocks are better than sticks. Want to fight about it?
Dude. Yeah.
Speaking of pointless
Gonna get
debates,
some rope.
speaking of pointless debates, let's have some hobby debate. Contrast paint. Awesome or cheating? Go.
Awesome or cheating? Those are the two options?
Yeah, those are the two options.
How about poopy pants?
you're just all in on the poopy pants, straight on the contrast.
I am curious.
I like the contrast though.
I am curious to see how this is going to go because I have an idea how it's going to go too. So let's
JP, you should be last. I think you should be last just because
No, that's fine.
you are definitely the hobby way.
Well, and you're the better painter out of all.
100%.
You are the
100%.
100%. So I'll go ahead and start with it. I think for myself, it's very rare that I'll use it. Not that I'm against it, but I've just been. It's not my first miniature game. I've been painting and playing miniature games for. I'm the youngest one here. It's gonna sound weird saying this, but I've been doing it for 20 years. And I like contrast paints for skin tones and my whites. I really like Moon Knight was the fastest model I've ever painted in my life, and he looks fantastic. I have nothing against anybody that uses contrast. It's very good, especially for beginner painters that are learning. It's great. And like I said, with skin tones, I'm not the greatest with skin tones. And my Sabretooth, aka Killmonger, I painted him with contrasts for his skin tone, and it looks great on the table. If that's all you're looking for with contrasts, like a quick, good look on the table, I think go for it. Myself, personally, because I know the techniques and have grown up painting models, it's not something I would go to for most circumstances. But for what it is, I think it's a good thing for the hobby.
I might be the opposite of you. I tend to, when I'm going to look at a model, I usually start thinking about and working with contrast paints.
Yeah, me too.
I really like them. I like the way they're easier. You don't need to mess as much with consistency. I've gotten to the point where I like almost use them in two different means. On the one hand, where you use them sort of in their full effect, where you get the shading, but also like use them just to tint or to shade a particular, like if you base coat with something to use it as a tint.
That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot. I will say, however, because the more I started using contrast paints, the more I started really using contrast paints and kind of using that as a fallback, as a crutch. I then bought Immortal Hulk, and you guys all basically bullied me into not using contrast paints, or at least not finishing with contrast paints.
like contrast paint.
Did we do that?
Oh, hell yeah, you did.
Man, I feel bad now.
No, you should. No, and quite honest. No, you don't.
Don't do it dirty like that.
Well,
Don't leave those coffee stains all over those beautiful muscles.
and I will.
That model is fantastic.
And
That
I will
little
say the Immortal, he was really the first guy that I used really more of a traditional layering, glazing techniques, and he's my favorite model. He's the best model I've done. So I've kind of come off of contrast paint mountain and have started to use it as sort of the base color, and then apply more traditional techniques on top of it to finish it and make it look more done. I just finished Nightcrawler, and I kind of finished just with a contrast paint, and I set him aside, picked him back up, and I'm like, oh, he's not done. And so I've kind of been working through and updating that.
No, that's fair. That's kind of what contrast. That's the other half of what I think contrast or like speed paints were for.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're initially there for new painters to get a feel for how painting works and applies, and then eventually you move on from it. If you don't move on from it, that's fine too. It's your prerogative. It's how you want to paint your models. Go for it. Yeah.
I think that's an important point. I think everybody paints differently. Everybody gets things out of painting differently. Some people just want to have some relative color on the model and put it on the table and go, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. Some people want to be like JP and spend 50
it's all
hours.
like time investment, right? Like,
well, and what you get out of it.
yeah.
You know, I mean, I have a cap of, unless it's somebody I really like and I really care about, I cap out at about 5 to 8 hours, and if I've put more than that in, I'm just done. I'm just tired of looking at it. I just can't do anymore. But that may go to my particular absence of patience than anything else.
That's fair. I grew up, my dad, he taught me how to paint growing up and everything, and he started with fantasy and 40K, and that's how I started. And we have a technique that's assembly line. You paint all the same color and get it out the way. Paint the next color.
I mean, that's what you gotta do when you're painting
multiple models with the same colors.
Yeah.
And that's what I've enjoyed about MCP the most, is for the most part, you might have repeating colors, like X-Men, for example. Repeating blues and yellows. And it works, but I agree with you, Patrick. It eventually gets to the point where I am sick of looking at the model and I just want it done.
Yeah.
A little piece of my soul dies every time I think about assembly line painting miniatures.
Oh, it's a lot.
It's a lot, and I can't break that habit. But it's been something that I've been doing for 20 years. I just can't break it.
My brother, I think it's his favorite part of painting is just lining up blood angels and doing this part, and then doing this part, and then doing this part. No, hard pass.
So you do like 99 skeletons.
Oh.
And you're just like, oh my god, this is stupid. Why did I do this? Why did I want to play with skeletons and zombies where I gotta have a billion of them?
So JP, you're really the accomplished painter here. What do you use contrast paints at all?
David, did you want to?
I was gonna see.
Nah, I'm good.
I'm trying to. Since you guys have been talking, I kind of want to organize my thoughts a little bit on this.
Okay.
It's gonna be all. It's gonna be like chasing a squirrel for me. So David, talk for a little bit. I'm just trying to get some bullet points down. I should have done this before. But...
Okay.
So I mostly like to use contrast paints to do things that I just don't feel like shading. I'm like, I don't really. Okay, that's good. And I've learned to blend some of the colors with it, so it looks a little better. And I use it to do things that are things that have what is it? Spectacular Spider-Man, where all of his recesses have all the little web patterns, so it's just easier just to do it with the contrast and then
100%.
Yep, 100%. I'll definitely give people kudos on that one. The way I paint, I put on multiple base coat, thin coats of red, and then I do a known oil over it. And then I'll dry brush over that. So I'm taking 6 steps when this guy with contrast paint. Just nothing against contrast paints in that situation, because it's a smart way of doing it, and that's the whole point of it.
Mm-hmm. I will say, wet blending contrast paints might be my favorite thing to do. I'm just saying.
He's like, oh, fuck that.
I feel judged once again. And I'm good with it. No. But with smoke or with fire or with anything.
Yeah, the fire. What is it? The Iandin.
Yep, Iandin yellow.
Yeah, that one is super good at fire.
I don't know why I can't do it with contrast. My brain just doesn't let me do it.
I just finished Nightcrawler, and I got his Brimstone Clouds all done, basically with a mix of Shyish Purple and Doomfire Magenta, and there is no way I could do it any better than by doing that. That is the apex of my skill level, but I'm really happy with how it came out.
No, that's great. I for whatever reason, it just doesn't work in my brain to wet blend with contrast paints. I hate myself and do it the hard way and wet blend with normal paints.
Wet blending with just the regular acrylics, I actually think that's kind of fun too. I really enjoy that as well.
I finally nailed my technique the way I do it with Rogue.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what it was about her, but something with her explosion clicked in my head on how I have to do it and how quickly I have to do it.
I kind of settled on my technique almost accidentally when I did Dormammu, because there's a lot of fire there, and it just came out, and I'm like, oh, I really like this.
Yeah. I don't know what it was about Rogue, though. She really did it. But I got some new paints, and I'll see how those work.
I actually find
Rogue's explosion is weird, too, isn't it?
It is.
Like,
weird.
Isn't part of the sections, completely flat?
Yeah. She's got flat...
Yeah,
dude,
I spent way too long in that fucking Rogue explosion.
Yeah.
My God, I probably spent 3 or 4 hours trying to get just the explosion right.
That's
it's such a weird...
It is
weird...
because it's got a bunch of
There's like the
spikes
explosions
coming
are
out.
jaggedy,
Well, yeah,
and
it's-
you're like,
you've
how
got-
are explosions jaggedy like this?
You've got
Doesn't make-
realistic explosion with
Yeah.
comic book explosion mixed in with it.
It's just weird.
And
I'm kind of dreading doing Gwenpool because she's like that too.
she is.
I haven't even.
I don't know why it clicked with Rogue though. It really worked because after that I did ASM and Sam shortly after
Yeah.
those guys.
And then you start to realize how many explosions are on stupid models in this game.
Tactical explosions.
We've gone from tactical explosions, tactical rocks to tactical explosions. What's next?
Tactical farty chairs.
Yes.
Because Xavier came out with another one.
I am gonna, if and when I finally do that, I'm gonna cut that thing off and just find like a clear plastic block and plop that thing
Yeah.
on top.
I wanted to. His
Straight
chair
up the
though.
butt.
His chair though, the way it's
Somebody needs to take and make some like
outlined, it doesn't
some
work
fucking
right.
like
Really?
shadow run
Yeah.
scooter or something to put Xavier.
I'll have to
in.
figure it out. He's so far
just like stupid
my-
looking thing.
my pile of shame. Oh, sorry, my pile of opportunity
One of those
is
one of
large
those
enough.
Walmart carts that like people will just be like
Oh, the
scooting around
scooters.
in Walmart.
Yeah.
Xavier running on one of those.
Hey, don't you dare knock Xavier back.
Or maybe he's in the basket and somebody else is like driving it.
I
It's
got
more
monument paints
driving it.
over Christmas. I will say I've only done one coat of those paints so far. I love them. So if you can get them and you can splurge and spend a little bit on yourself, do it. I think it's good.
I have the titanium white from Monument, and I love it to death. I am saving up. I'm really anxious to see what the War Paint Fanatic looks like. That's coming out, I think, next month.
Yeah, Missy was talking about it tonight. I can't remember what she said the release date was. It's soon.
I
though.
think it's
I think
next
that-
week.
Yeah, the big boxers are coming
Oh
out.
my god, she said that they have a giant 184 or something set with brushes and stuff that retails for like almost $800.
Yes. All two.
What?
Yeah, I was
It-
like, what the?
Yeah, it's all like 200.
That's some like Magic the Gathering
That's
price
like, that's
gouging.
like some used car shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got like a
Like-
two.
Gotta take out a new mortgage to get a paint set.
They've got like a 216 bottle set that's like $500-600, and there's like
Jesus.
there's a medium one that's like
Paints gonna paint
200.
themselves.
No
Just
kidding.
throw them on the thing.
No kidding. So I am not making the mistake I made with the first speed paints. I'm gonna buy a couple of single bottle droppers and see if I like it.
That was one of my bullet points here.
I better
All right,
stop.
JP.
I better
We're
shut
gonna
up and
give
let you
your
talk
chance
then.
now.
No, that's fine. You can talk shit about those first rollout speed paints all you want.
I got a whole bunch of them that I actually still use them, but yeah,
I do too.
they're not great.
I do too.
The version 1 speed paint that reactivated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you better make sure your models are covered real
Right,
good.
Yeah.
Even because I think even if you seal them, they still reactivated, didn't they?
I have found as long as you let it dry like a long time, it doesn't reactivate, but it sort of defeats the purpose of speed paint if you have to wait for a day to paint the next color.
Yeah.
But the speed paint 2.0 actually is really good. I've got a couple of those and I really like those.
So you bought the full set
No,
of the first,
of the first one.
and then the next one you only bought 2.
Correct.
Womp womp.
No one said I was a good planner.
Hey man, I bought the whole set of the first one too. So, yeah. So I guess I'm not really a competition painter. But
Although
I
you
will-
win all the time.
Yeah, you win all the time.
I don't go into competition.
I know.
Though. Like
He's not going into the
I'm-
worthy, for example.
I'm fine taking like best painted at a tournament, but I'm just not putting in the time and effort to. I don't think I have the skill to paint at that level anyway right now. If I worked on it more, but I don't want to be at that point where I'm spending 50 to 80 hours on a model.
Well, how much time do you like on an average? How much time do you spend on
Just a
model?
regular dude.
Yeah.
Probably 10 hours, I
Okay.
would say. It depends, though. Are you talking like from clipping them off the sprue or like
Just
fully
painting.
assembled,
Just painting.
prepped,
Just
primed?
you're done.
I've got the colors on the wet palette and I'm going.
Yep, just the actual painting process. Because I mean,
I'd say probably, it depends, but like 8 to 10 hours, I would say.
and how does that compare with you guys? I would say 8 would be on the highest
Yeah, 8.
maximum.
Yeah, that would be on mine.
Average,
Yeah,
I would say
high end.
4 to 5.
Yeah, probably.
I probably average about 7 to 8. 8 on the high end, but low end is 7.
Okay.
I still spend a good chunk of time on them just because it's part of the hobby, man. I enjoy it.
I agree.
It lets me turn my brain off.
Mm-hmm. There is very much something about how if you spend a lot of time in your left brain, I think is the rational part. If you do right brain things that are creative, the left brain gets to relax, and I love that. It feels really good to just be able to live in that side of your head. So
I've been off painting for, I want to say, like 4 months. I haven't painted anything. Well, I'm lying. I repainted a couple bases so they would match for LVO and for Big Beef and for tonight. I've repainted a couple bases.
You painted Ultron. You painted his
that was but that was before
Skull.
That was like October, November or something.
So you really haven't painted anything since the new core box came out?
No.
Wow.
Well, I mean,
Just
we haven't
Ultron.
had a new release either
Yeah.
Until
now. Yeah.
I mean, it's not like I'm
last
painted.
month
It's not like I'm all painted up anyway. I probably still have 30 or 40 models, just maybe more.
that's about what I'm
Something
sitting
like
at
that.
too.
It's like, why do I want to paint Viper?
You beat me to it. That's literally what I was gonna say.
What a waste of time.
I would paint Viper before there's other things I would paint, but
I bet you would.
yeah. I mean, she's no Spider-Woman, but
Fucking Viper.
Oh my god, I can't.
Her pose is not great either.
No, it's
Isn't
not
it
that
like,
great.
it looks like
It's a
it's
weird
backwards?
twisty.
I think she's got a tactical rock.
No, she's got a tactical like door
Oh,
or some shit like that. It's weird.
She's still on sprue for me.
I was as I was painting today, I looked over to my wife as I was painting Nightcrawler, and I'm like, my least favorite part about painting these models is a crotch in my face. And then I thought about it, and it's like, it's a comic crotch. So, we got a 9-inch flaccid bulge in the comic crotches. And then I thought, with the whole Viper thing, at least there's boobs.
Yeah, I
But,
guess.
whatever. It's just not my thing.
no, I now we're expecting this conversation to go, but I agree. I understand what you're saying.
All right, so contrast paints. They're billed to be quick. That is true. If you want to get something to the table, you paint them with contrast paint, and they look acceptable from 3 feet away. You start getting closer, and I mean, it falls apart. But I mean, what do you expect if you got a product that can get there in like 30 to 60 minutes?
I suppose.
Some of my problems with it though, color application. It's very unforgiving.
Yes.
It's a kind of a catch-22 because it's supposed to be easy for beginners, but you need brush control, which is hard. It's like, it's not a skill that beginner painters have. So what you end up doing is you go outside the lines.
No.
You end up painting something you don't want to a certain color. There's no way to get that color off. It's there. So then you get all this like squiggly. It looks like the old lady putting makeup or putting lipstick on. It's like you just stop. It's not working. So it's kind of a funny product to me in that sense. And then like once you have, by the time you have good enough brush control to like really not bleed into places you don't want to bleed in with contrast paints, which are kind of hard to control anyway, I feel like you are at a point where you don't need the contrast paint anymore. You could use traditional paint because it takes a lot of time with a paintbrush to get comfortable enough where you're like your lines are real clean and like your brush control's on point. It just takes a lot of reps, a lot of hours behind a paintbrush. Kind of going with that difficult to control thing, like I've found that with contrast or like speed paints, I'll apply them and they will look fine, but as they're drying, they will take on kind of they call it coffee staining, but it won't look as the transition isn't as smooth. It's not like as good of a gradient. It'll just be like
It'd be super dark in one spot and like lighter.
Yeah, and it's like not a smooth transition.
Yeah,
and that look is just not acceptable to me for my stuff. So I don't like that, and I don't know how to not have that.
Well, and sometimes it just pools in weird
yeah,
spots.
it pools, And like you can control the pooling to a certain point, but like you have to put the model down at some point, and then it will pool more, or you like mess with it, but that like the contrast paints reach a point where when you mess with them, you can like actually like dig out the paint and leave like a big gouge in the color.
Yep.
Yeah,
And then you're screwed too, because you have no way to fix that with the way contrast paint, just the nature of it.
Yeah, the worst thing with a contrast paint is if it's like 3/4 of the way dry, and then you
terrible.
try to do something.
Like, what do?
You just took a divot out of whatever you're doing.
Start over.
You almost have to like file down what you did.
Yes.
To take the texture out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you went over speed paint version 1.0 reactivates. It's probably not an issue for a lot of people, but whoever got stuck holding that box, like Patrick and I, yeah, that's an issue you got to deal with. Kind of going back to the way it doesn't blend as well as I want after it dries. It's hard to go back to like the shadow recess areas and like paint into there.
Yeah.
And get like a good, you can't like wet blend out from a speed paint very well, because you don't have a color match for that speed paint in the traditional acrylic paint. And you can't really wet blend, you can't mix like speed paint and like acrylic paint very well. It just doesn't work. So like when you're trying to blend something out from the recesses, it gets kind of weird. The pros are, well, I guess another thing is I guess I look at it as a tool, right? And I've seen people on YouTube and stuff that use it really well, and I'm not sure how they're doing it. Like, I don't know if I need to get closer and see like all the imperfections in it, but like from the way they've recorded it, it looks really good. And I don't understand how it's happening, because it's literally a product where you just paint it on and like suck out the pooling areas and you let it dry. Like, I just don't understand how some of these people are getting some of these results.
It's also not necessarily consistent across.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you get like thicker or thinner, and it just...
Well, that's another thing. Not with the speed paints, but with Citadel paints, is the pigment and the opacity of a lot of their contrasts are all over the map.
Yeah.
But that's true of some acrylic lines too. I mean, there's like,
that's true, but you could work with it.
you can
Like with contrast paint, you apply it, and then it is what it is. Like, if you got something that's like darker or lighter or whatever in a traditional acrylic, you can go back over and paint more.
You can do that some with speed paint too. There's a powdery blue. I can't remember what the Citadel color is, but it's a really like more opaque than a normal speed paint or contrast paint is. And if you can hit it, you can actually layer it over a couple of times and get a decent color level. Some of the really thicker contrast paints too. If you thin it down with the medium, you really can. There's things you can do with contrast paints. I have found that it's not entirely just this is your option and that's it. Like I used contrast paint to use for Psylocke's Energy Blade, and I had a base white, and then the edge with a magenta, and then I had like a 2-to-1 medium to magenta mix, and it sort of dotted in around it and got what I thought was a pretty good gradient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, it's a tool. It requires, I mean, there's definitely like a skill level to it. Like, the more you play with it, the more you work with it, the better you're going to get with it. I haven't sat down. I've just gotten frustrated with them kind of from the start.
But how long have you been painting?
I mean, seriously, probably maybe like 4 years or something. I mean, I've painted back like 20 years ago till now, but not with any kind of regularity or
Do you feel like you built up a skill set sort of before contrast paint got really, really popular, or at least did it separately from contrast paint?
Yeah. I didn't know what contrast paint had been out for a while before I even knew about it. When I heard about it, I was curious and I bought some, and they kind of do what's advertised, but there's just issues with them too. Like they don't go on like big flat areas.
That's very true.
Or they don't even have to be flat. Like if you contrast paint green on a Hulk, it's just it doesn't work.
It's worth bullying somebody about.
It
Clearly,
doesn't work.
JP's also very biased about Hulk. If he could play a Planet Hulk affiliation, I'm guaranteed he would
Oh
do
my
it.
god! Don't.
You're like, give me a red Hulk.
let's
Give me
go.
Give me a green one. Let's go.
I'm gonna have to awkwardly leave the room and
She'll
rub one
fix
out.
it.
Okay.
Hulk smash everyone.
So let me go over the pros.
Yes.
All right, I do use it as a tool. I do use my contrast stuff. Pro tip: use it on metal. Paint something silver, and then you can tint it with your speed paints, and it's awesome.
100%.
I do like that. I've
Like-
done it before.
I know a ton of people who fight with gold.
Yes.
Gold paint is notoriously bad. There's a couple that are really good. Well, one that I can think of, it's the Vallejo Air Metallic, whatever. That one's really good, but it's like tinted greenish.
Yeah.
It's got a very green tint, but it's very good at covering. But man, some of those Citadel golds are dog crap.
Yeah,
Even
Holy,
yeah, I mean,
they're terrible.
yeah, I mean, the best of the one's Retributor, the armor one, and even that's a trick. But yeah, same thing.
They're terrible. They're thick and like pasty,
And pasty.
And they'll
but they don't like have any coverage.
Yeah.
The
the
metallics
worst.
I use Army Painter metallics. And I actually enjoy those
The silvers I
a
like.
bit more. Yeah.
Silver is
Well,
them.
and like in classic fashion, two thin coats. And I just like how their metallics work. I've never liked Citadel metallics or Vallejo metallics. I think I've used a couple times.
Vallejo Air is the way to go.
Yeah. Okay.
They're
But
very
yeah-
thin, but
but-
they have good coverage.
But yeah, just getting a silver base coat and then using the contrast paint as a tint
Yes.
to get a bronze or a
Yes.
gold or
I've done it
whatever.
with blue.
Mhm.
I did it with my Sentinels.
Yeah.
I did it with blue and
Yeah.
the magenta or whatever.
Yep, my Sentinels are entirely I rattle canned them lead belcher and then just contrast painted over and tinted them and it love how they look.
hmm I use it for like kind of traditional, like if you want to get into recesses.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just something that I'm like, this would just be easier if I use contrast. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It kind of just depends on what I'm painting. And sometimes I'll go to it if I'm having issues and I'm taking a different approach. Sometimes, like I think you touched on this, when you are trying to come back and add some like vibrancy to your colors,
Mhm.
just use it as a filter. I also use it when I've been blending and like my colors don't quite gel very well. I'll put like a real thin like filter of a contrast paint over it, and it kind of marries all the colors together. But and another, I guess the other advantage to them is you need fewer colors, right?
Yeah.
Like that's one of the big roadblocks to starting painting is it's just so expensive. You need your brushes.
It's daunting.
You need all your like supplies. I mean nowadays you want a wet palette and blah blah blah. But then you need paints, and like if you look at the list of paints that I remember when I was painting Warhammer, what was it? I think I was playing Eldar 3rd Edition, and I like looked at like what they used as the paints because they would list them,
Mhm.
how they painted the whatever,
Yeah.
and there'd be like 12 or 15 colors for one
Taste the
aspect,
rainbow,
for
bro.
one aspect warrior.
Chase the
And
rainbow.
it was just like, how many colors do I need? So
Yeah.
like, I guess with speed paint or contrast paint or whatever, you don't have to have all these colors. You just hit it with the green, and it does all the green stuff, and it gives you your contrast. And then you end up using what, like maybe 5 or 6 colors on a model.
Yeah.
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 So I mean, there's definitely some pros to that as well. Overall, I guess I just use it when I feel like I need it, or it's going to be more useful than acrylic. But generally, I think I probably use them probably 1% or less of the time.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
I will say though. Oh, go ahead.
No, you.
So I'm going to include shades here too, and I'm going to say, stop using the Nuln oil. Stop soaking your guys in Nuln oil. That's all.
What do you mean by soaking in Nuln oil? Because I don't soak them in Nuln oil.
Oh, I wasn't targeting you. But
I know,
now I
but
am.
I'm curious now. Well, see,
Well,
that makes me feel good about my Nuln oil application then, because he doesn't know I use Nuln oil.
For superheroes, I feel like you want them to be brighter colors.
Yeah.
Nuln oil
Fair.
does the thing where it like gets in the recesses. It gives you some shading or whatever in those
I think it
spots
also
where.
dulls out the.
Oh,
But see, that's why I dry brush over it.
Yeah.
it's
I
such
dry
a
brush
duller.
with a bright color
It's such
over
a
it.
duller.
It is, but like I like the fact that it's there for, like you said, getting in those recesses, getting the detail a little bit.
Yeah, I
And
feel like
I dry brush over that on top of it, so that way it have a pop of color.
I think you can do that in a better way though, with like even a contrast or speed paint, like a darker color.
The only thing I use Nuln oil for is for the concrete on the bases of the MCP
Oh
models.
god, yeah, so many stupid. AMG, make some new bases.
Yeah.
Do something different.
Nah, man, they got 4 molds in the warehouse. They got to use them.
Because
guys, listen to this. Make new bases.
because they must have 4 molds, because then you get like 8 bases for every model that you get, which feels weird.
Just tired of.
Ooh,
New
no, I'll
York
take that back. They have 5 molds.
Fucking curbs.
Well, I made the mistake of basing a couple of my guys on the steel grate thing, whatever that is.
Oh, I like those.
What? You can have all mine.
Oh,
Yeah, you can base all your guys with the steel grate.
so
am
you mean
no
the ones where
longer-
like the steel grate and the brick?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes.
Does it have brick
Yeah,
on it?
it's-
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't use that anymore. I'm done with that thing.
Other than every once in a while, it's hard to get it to stick on the thing.
Yeah.
But if you have a model that nothing much is going on with it, I don't mind adding a little extra interest and color on the base. But like I wouldn't put Nightcrawler with all his big brimstone bamf on top of that. But if you've got a model that's just kind of standing there, I don't mind giving it a little extra.
So many.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
I just don't like it because it doesn't have any continuity really with the other bases.
It's
Like,
weird.
It has no concrete on it at all. It's got
No.
the brick and the.
Well, I paint my brick as concrete, so that
Oh,
way
do you?
it looks like it's part of everything.
Oh.
But you're right. It's weird looking. It's not part of the rest of the bases.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. But
New bases. Guys, make new bases.
too late. It's 4 years. They're
Yeah.
not doing it.
not
Oh
doing
yeah,
it,
it's not
yeah.
gonna. Oh,
They'll come up
There's-
with one.
there's
base.
2 models with different bases.
There's
There's-
more than 2.
There's at least 2 that I can think.
I can think of 2 right now.
Thanos and Dormammu.
Thanos and Dormammu.
Commandos.
Oh yeah.
Commandos are a completely different
Well,
base.
I
Do
guess
they?
Yes.
Ah.
there's new Tooth
remember.
and Logan and the new
That's true.
The new Wakandans.
Yeah.
The rivalry
And then
pack
Juggernaut. He's got a
Yeah,
different
Juggernaut
base.
does.
I Hulk.
Rogue does.
Yep.
No, I thought
No,
Rogues
Rogue
No.
technically gets slotted
into the base. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Fucking
like
potato. Like it literally like
Emma's got
dick
a,
sucks the other one.
like Emma's got a base that goes on top of a base.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
technically those are the things that go on
Yeah,
top of
they
the
are.
base are
I think
smaller.
same with
But it's
World War II
literally-
cap. World War II cap's base is like that too.
Yeah,
See, I
that's
haven't
right.
put actually she's the only model I have not put together.
Rogues is literally the
think-
same diameter as the base.
It's a little bit smaller.
No, because you put it right on the other base. It like
No, maybe his is a completely
covers
different base.
and goes down.
Actually, I
on
think
the
his
sides
is a
of it.
completely different base.
Sam's?
No, it is.
No.
Oh,
Caps.
Oh, yeah.
It is a completely different
Yeah,
base.
it's
Okay, so there's a
base.
couple out there, but still,
Yeah,
it's
because it has like the sandbag and the potato masher grenades.
I wish they would do that more.
I do
Yeah,
too.
me too. They need to be different bases.
Okay, so did we decide if they're awesome or cheating? Yes.
They're
yes,
cool.
we did.
They're
Very
something.
cool.
They exist. They exist.
I can't say that they're cheating, but I can't say that they're awesome.
I
can't
think-
really go one way or the
They're
other.
a thing you can use.
I think at some level we all are kind of in consensus that they're a tool, and it's just a question of how much you want to use it. Like JP's 1%, I'm probably closer to 30 to 50%.
Yeah, me too. I'm about there.
I would say I'm probably about a 1%. I
you
think
know,
I've applied it on
some
3
fucking
models.
super paint nerd is gonna come out and be like, "Contrast paints are awesome because you can do all these things." And they're like, "I don't know what."
Yeah,
what
we're
do you
gonna-
do that.
Yeah, one Hidalgo is going to send us an angry email, that's for sure.
I'm glad I have some for sure.
Yeah,
I would feel a little. I don't want to say naked, but I'd feel like I would have an incomplete tool set. without-
There's things that contrast paints do that you can't do with acrylics, and I think it's important to have that. It's just a question of how
Yeah.
much you want to use it.
Right. Agreed.
Okay, so we still have a headline to get into, and
Sorry,
David-
guys, this one's a long one.
Hey, it's gonna be worth it. There's a lot of contrast paint talk. David, this was kind of your idea, so why don't you tell us about what your thought was and what you wanted to kind of get into?
So, I've been having debates in the Discord about like rules and interactions, and one of the big ones is movement and how you measure, because a lot of people just don't do it right, or they're just like kind of half-assing measurement, which is, I mean, it
And
happens.
from what I can assume, it's not out of ill intent.
No.
You're just playing
Yeah,
the game.
yeah. Some people, some people don't realize that there's the you can't have 2 of the same template on the table at the same time, and like how that applies to certain things. Like, you can't, like, technically you can't measure like ranges when you deploy a model, because technically the range 3 has to be on the table.
Yeah. So you can't, for a good example, you can't test spiritable conduct.
Yes, you can't test. You can't deploy a model and then be like, oh, I need to measure off of them.
See if I'm within 2.
Yeah,
to
to see
get
if
the
you're within
benefit.
2. Yeah.
So I always wonder this. So can you can't have 2 of them at the same time?
Yeah.
So then can you put a 3 down and kind of get the idea, pick it up, and then put a 2 down?
Not technically on deployment, because the 3 has to be out.
Right, but just like say you're in the middle of a game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, it's like, all right, I'm gonna measure 3 here, and then okay, I got a feel for that, and then I'm gonna pick up the
Yeah,
3.
you can pick up the 3 and go and measure again. But if you go and you have a model and you're picking it up to move it,
Right.
the whatever template, like if you're using a movement template, you can't like pick it back up and put another movement template down and then put the model down.
Now, does that get into because it's pre-measuring, or is that something
Yeah,
different?
because then you're using a proxy base at that point, right?
Okay.
No proxy bases.
Yeah, no proxy
Pagani
bases.
hates it.
Yes, because he got traumatized from War Machine. Because somebody at some tournament like measured, took like, I want to say he took like 25 minutes making like just stupid little measurements with proxy bases. Because in War Machine you could proxy base. You could be like, okay, so you got this whole character's activation where you're like plotting and then you're moving a base and you're plotting and you're doing it and you're doing all. It's just like there's too much stuff going on, man. You know, like,
Is that MCP is basically the only miniature game I've played. Is the no proxy base rule, is that common? Is that
From my understanding, it is very common. I
Okay.
don't think Warhammer allows it.
yeah, I don't
Just
think
from my
Warhammer does.
knowledge, just from previous editions. The current edition, I have no idea. But just from previous editions that I've played, proxy bases were a no-go.
Yeah,
War
most
Machine-
games still.
War Machine was the only one that I knew of that allowed proxy bases.
well? And if you're gonna have an interaction like that where people are just taking a half hour to measure everything out, I can see why you would have that rule.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think it's just like a lot of, like, I mean, I play a lot of convo, so right, you have to like know how to measure range 1, and then be like, okay, you can't take another tool out and when you're in the middle of a place and measure off of it. So you have to like sort of know. You get kind of like eyeball it usually. It just depends, and I think it's also a lot of like having understanding with your opponent about what you're gonna like. Sometimes you kind of have to explain intent, like, hey, I'm intending to measure outside of whatever this range or in this range, and as long as you let your opponent know that, then that usually works out. But
most opponents, I have never run into an opponent where if you mention what your intent is and you both know that you can get there no problem, they're not going to care.
yeah, they're not going to care.
Like if you're a long mover and you just kind of place somebody close, like within range 1 of an objective, and you're like, hey, the intent's to be within range 1 on this side, and you both know you're going to get there, nobody's going to be
nobody.
I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is like when you move, say you move a character up, and you're like, the intent is to be within medium of your character to throw. Like you can't have that intent because you
right. That intent is different.
You already have a medium down.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
and the same thing happens with anything with places.
Yeah, like I'm placing 3 onto the point. My intent is to be within 1. You can't do that.
You can't do that. No,
Yeah,
agreed. But other intents, like the ones I was giving examples for, nobody's going to care.
No, I don't. I think that kind of. I don't know. Unless your opponent is. I don't want to be mean.
So you guys have been, I mean, you've been to LVO. It's kind of the top level of a game like that. Are the way opponents interact with and the kind of level of technicality you have to have with your movement, with how you handle those, do you feel like at a tournament like that it's more important to, or you're expected to be more technically accurate with your rules?
I mean, there are a lot of times where I'll like put my movement tool down to move once, and then obviously be within range to get somewhere. So I'll just pick my guy up and put him within whatever.
Yeah.
Like
sometimes I'll just take out a measure. Like I know I got this. Let me just do the thing right. But
I don't think people are that.
I mean, sometimes it gets a little sweaty.
If it's close, if the distance is like it's going to be very close. I mean, yeah, they want to see double measure. I mean, everybody would, right?
Well, the other thing too is like if you get into that situation and you're in an event, don't hesitate to call for a judge. Like, just get a judge ruling. Don't try
literally the judge's job.
Don't try to like debate it with your opponent. Just say, okay, we need a judge to make this call, because otherwise you're just going to get into like a weird
25-minute argument.
Yeah, and some people will take it personal or be like, it's going to be this kind of game. Like, if we're going to do this, I'm going to be nitpicky about this thing.
Yeah. Like, the other thing is, this is kind of on topic, kind of not, but it's in my head now. If you have a measurement that's really, 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 really freaking close, just call a judge.
Yeah.
Because if you're the one measuring, then you're the one who's going to fuck it up. And if you bump a model with one of your tools when you're measuring, like, you kind of screw the game state. Like, and usually when you bump a model, you're bumping it out of range. And usually when you're checking range, you want to be in the range. So just call a judge if you're that close.
And if the judge fucks it up, then it's on them, right? Like if they bump a model, then that's they gotta make a.
Because there's been plenty of times where I'm sitting there trying to measure this and it's super close, and okay,
I'm screwed. Sorry, your build took to Sinister's traps. Okay.
Oh, you're talking about that? That was like 2 millimeters. Like, hey Alex, I got a really easy call for you. Alex is like, he's in. Like, what?
Listen, 2 mil. Like, I'm sorry. I take everything by the inch. Play with that as you want. Play with that as you want. As I said it, 2 millimeters though. Like, it just didn't look like it was.
That's literally a cut hair right there.
It is.
So if you're at a tournament and you're on the clock, when you're measuring your model, it's all your time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can if your opponent is like taking time, you can flip the clock over to them.
Okay.
If it's your activation and they're just like measuring a bunch of random stuff out, you can flip the clock over and be like, hey, measure your stuff, and then they'll flip it back.
I've never had that happen.
But it usually doesn't happen. Usually people don't
like if they're measuring for like a fallback or something. But I mean, you can measure on your opponent's turn.
Yeah.
If like your opponent can't flip the clock if you're just measuring something. But if you're waiting for your opponent to do something and it's your turn, then yeah, flip the clock to him. But I'm trying to think of when.
Yeah, there's not usually a circumstance when that happens unless you're like
Like if it's
unless
like
you're
a
trying to do, like,
lifesaver or like
a reactive
or
bump
yeah.
or something. Yeah, it usually doesn't come up very often.
Yeah.
Is that something you should think you do automatically? Like if somebody, like if it's a lifesaver or something like that, and should you just kind of immediately go and hit the clock if you're worried about it? Is it something you should have a conversation with about it, or I guess what's the etiquette that you would address that with?
I think it would depend on how long I was. Like if my opponent, like if I'm going to make an attack and my opponent knows they're going to lifesaver and they just quickly put the template down and then they measure and then they're good, that's fine. But if they put the template down and then they're kind of like playing around with angles and like
yeah,
that's when you probably just flip it over to their time.
I totally agree. Or if you're like sub 5 minutes on your clock,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, your lifesaver, click. Like you don't want to mess around with your seconds.
Yeah, you don't want to. Especially when it gets closer to crunch time.
Yeah.
But that's a whole time management discussion rather than necessarily.
That's a good discussion too.
Yeah, we probably should have one of those eventually.
Yeah.
But those two things, I mean, when you're talking about measurement rules, they do kind of flow together.
They do. They definitely do. Well, and the more you're measuring, the more stuff you got going on. It's going to take longer and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you want to optimize. It's a balance between clock time and optimizing your options. And sometimes you have a lot of options. And sometimes a lot of those options take measurements. So sometimes it feels like you're burning a lot of time doing stupid things, like that aren't actually doing anything, like i.e. measurements. But, I mean, if you're making suboptimal choices with, like, more of a concern for your clock, then you're going to be putting yourself behind game state wise, and you might not be able to recover from that. Whereas the clock doesn't matter until it hits 0.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
I mean, it might be messing with you, like psychologically, if you get like whatever your break point is, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, it might start like freaking you out, but like it really doesn't matter until you death clock. So, I mean, at LVO, I think I got to like 2 or 3 minutes in like most of my games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only time I've actually seen you sweat about a clock was
that one game you had with Aaron Franklin when he was playing Shield.
I clocked there.
he did clock there.
I clocked.
That's the only time I've seen him sweat about a clock.
Yeah, that game was crazy. But at LVO, I was sub 1 minute against Eric round 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's relaxing.
I had snappy activations that round.
That was
Doop,
like
done.
me at that
Doop doop done.
that one event where I'm just like my opponent was like go and I'm like clock.
Yeah.
That was the
Because I
same
was like-
one.
Yeah,
That was the team tournament.
it was the team
same
tournament,
one.
yeah.
Because
I was like, oh, I just got to do the thing with She-Hulk and that's it.
Yeah.
So, what would you suggest in terms of if people want to be more intentional or more thoughtful about how they're addressing their measurements? What would you suggest that they think about?
Well, I think the first thing is don't let your opponent intimidate you into speeding up your measurements. Like if you're like trying to get the right thing, if your opponent's like, oh, you can just move your model there and do the thing. Like if you're wanting to take time to measure stuff out, you make sure you get it right. So that way at least, your opponent can't come back and later and be like, oh, you mismeasured that or whatever. Which
don't let your opponent play your game.
Yeah, don't do that.
And if they are, call somebody over.
Yeah,
Again,
call
that's their job.
I would say it comes up with range more than movement tools.
Yes.
But I see, like, even my games tonight, a couple of my opponents used the range tool, and then once they placed, they nudged out to, like, the max 1 with the range tool.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to be like, meh, you can't do that. But, like,
You technically
you can't do that.
You can't do that, yeah.
So let back up. Just go over that again. Just make sure I got that.
So, like, you've got Miles. You place the range 3 for web swing. You want to web swing onto a point. So you web swing onto a point, and then you pick up your range 3 or whatever. Maybe you use the range 3, the end,
you
the
just
one
tilt
at
it,
the edge, or you use the
and to
smaller
back them up
and
or
then you,
make
like,
them
to
closer.
readjust to outside 1 or to
Mhm.
just at max 1, like you're using the range tool twice. Because technically, when you're placing that, 3 still needs to be down. And when you pick it up, it's done.
Yeah, well, and the other thing too is you're technically using a proxy base because
Yes.
once you because you're using Miles's base to proxy the measurement off of like basically because you've got two measurements and a base in there.
So even though you're using the same tool, because you're using the different edge, it counts as
Yeah,
two
it doesn't matter as
Oh.
long as it's the tool.
Okay.
So I guess we should talk about that too. Like once you put a movement or a range tool down to move off of, once you pick that model up, that ruler is set.
Yeah, it
on the
has
table.
to stay there.
You can't
Like, you
change
can't
the
move it.
angle. You can't do anything. That thing has got to be where it is. So then you pick it up and you can place it touching anywhere on that ruler. But once you pick that model up, you're locked in.
So it's kind of like in a,
Technically, you're locked in. Yes.
so it's kind of like in competitive chess. Once you pick a piece up, you're committed to the action.
Mhm.
And it even gets weirder when you're doing places with the range measurements because most people are just like, oh, I can place anywhere in this range. But you really have to, like, once the tool's down, you have to place off the tool. You can't just be like, oh, I want to be over here.
Mhm.
Like if you realize that was a better spot or whatever.
Right.
Because didn't that happen with you and Shirley at one event where he was placing your venom?
Oh, there was a technicality with the
Because he couldn't get the maximum distance to place your venom
I think he was
out.
scalpeling him, maybe.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
wanted to put him somewhere between a car and a barricade, and he wasn't sure if he would fit. I don't know. It got resolved, but I don't remember. It's been a while back.
Yeah, but that's like
That
the
was
situations where
almost
that
2
comes
years
up.
ago.
Yeah. And in that case, if he couldn't fit where he was, he'd have to be replaced. But
He has to
still
stay on the
on
template.
that
You can't just
ruler
be like,
where it
oh, I
was.
want to put you over here.
because at that point you're proxy basing.
So it's
But-
definitely one of those things.
That's the thing I see the most, though, is the range tool to as a superpower to move, and then measuring off
Mhm.
one, or measuring a range to somebody to hit them or whatever. Like you can't maximize that distance and use a range place.
So once you put the tool down, you've got to, for lack of a better term, eyeball to make sure that you're getting
Yes.
yourself to where you want to
Yes.
be. And then you can measure afterwards to see if you got it right or not, but you're stuck where you're at.
Mhm. Yeah, if you scalpel strange into the middle of a pack of dudes, you gotta be able to like hit all of them within 2, and you can't like do micro adjustments after and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can always kind of like eyeball the place of where you want to be at and kind of make your measurements. I will sometimes look at the mat itself and I'll be like, okay, the mat has like a weird corner
Yes.
intersection. I'll be like,
Yes.
okay, I'm gonna need to land right there.
Yes, that's definitely something that's hard even now for me to do, but that's kind of the idea is to like locate a specific thing on the map. That's where you need to be.
But what locks it in terms of putting the tool down is when you pick the model
when
up.
you pick the model up. Yep.
So before you pick the model up, you could put the tool wherever you want.
Mhm.
Yes, and you can measure, make as many adjustments and different measure tools or whatever you want to do.
And I guess this kind of goes hand in hand with like optimized play. So say you have Hulk, I guess is a good example. So you've
Always
got,
a good example.
right? I mean, he's the man. So
Planet Hulk.
As long as you don't contrast paint him.
say you want to be maximum range 1 of a thing, but you need to use movement plus to get there. So you would want to gamma leap first because you're using your range tool,
Mhm.
and then you would want to do the movement because then you could measure with the range tool one off.
Yeah,
the,
you
one
don't
off
want
the
to
spot.
do the.
If you move and then gamma leap, you can't maximize that range
Because you're using
because you can't measure.
because you're using it both to do the leap and then to measure where you're
Yes.
going. Whereas if you're using like a short tool, you can use the range 2 tool wherever you want.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
okay.
And that comes up a lot actually because
It
there's a
does.
lot of characters who have places.
Especially like range 2.
Yes.
Range 2s and 3s.
Yeah,
For sure.
A lot of range 2s, a lot of range 3s. Well, and like, I'm trying to think. There's also like tricks, like knowing that the medium tool is the
the
exact
extract?
distance is picking up an extract.
Yeah.
So if you can measure medium, you can pick up an extract from that character if they drop it, because a measurement, one side is range 1, the base is range 1, or the base is 1 inch. The
It's
template
inch plus.
Yeah, the template's an inch, and then the range 2 is 3 inches, so that equals 5, which is the same distance as the medium move is exactly 5.
From
Like the whole
if you sock it to the,
no, it's to the end of the tips is 5 inches, exactly 5 inches.
I'm saying if you have to, yeah, we're saying the same thing.
Yeah. Not that I mean, that's like one of the only weird circumstances where that works out, because like the long move is like 7 3/4 of an inch or something stupid.
Yeah, I mean, there's some other things, but I don't know them. I know you can use like a range 5 to do something. There's like a whole cheat sheet somebody came up with, but I've never committed all that to memory, because it's like, I don't know how often that's used. The medium is super helpful.
The medium, for measuring when you can pick up something.
That is amazingly helpful. I use it
all
every
the time.
game.
Yeah. Because usually I'm just like, oh, I need to measure, so I'm outside. Exactly, I got it. That's all I needed to know.
Okay, I'm going to be the annoying lawyer here. If you're using the medium tool for something other than what's intended, aren't you proxy basing?
You're still measuring.
You're taking a measurement.
Yeah, you're still measuring.
Okay.
Because you can technically pre-measure literally at any point.
Yeah,
during
you can
the game.
pre-measure at any point.
Proxy basing would be like picking your guy up and like
Okay.
Placing in there and
like
then
kinda,
going back.
kind of figuring out like, oh, do I have range 2 to you? Okay, I'm
Okay.
gonna put him back.
I got you.
Or like picking up like legitimately proxy based like off your tray that you're
Right.
not using, and putting it out there and be like, oh well, I'm not gonna do that move because I'm not gonna be within range 2.
I got you.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other?
Because there's no specific rules on how you could use a tool to measure. Right?
Okay.
Because you could technically use the like width of a movement tool to measure something too, but
Right.
like, I don't know where that would get you.
It won't.
Yeah,
'Cause
it's not
there's
gonna
nothing
get, it's
that
not going to
doesn't
get you
fit.
very far. I mean, you could do some weird stuff to like figure out like pushes and stuff, but
So, and you can't. Well, I don't know. Can you? I mean, I've seen measurement tools painted, obviously.
yeah.
Could you paint them in such a way where you paint like the markings? Like, here's a 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. Is there anything that's
you probably could?
is there anything that is against the rules about doing something like that?
Yeah, I think there's some rule issues there, but
I mean, it's definitely the spirit of the rule is being violated. But again, in my line of work,
think
I don't care about that.
This has come up, I think, on the rules, the rules forum, I think.
About modifying the tools?
Yeah.
Maybe it is something in there about
It's
modifying.
definitely.
I know you can't definitely can't add something to the tool,
Right.
The template to
Right, like you can't make notch markings. on
yeah.
it.
But I hadn't thought about paint.
What if I painted a notch marking?
Well, see, that's
Well,
just
so
it.
this
That's
is
kind
like,
of
what
what
if
you're
you-
doing.
What if you painted something a bunch of different colors, but had each color a specific?
Like,
Like,
oh, the
yeah.
pink happens to be every range ruler mark.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, most of the range tools, they have kind of the designs on them. I suppose if you figured out, okay, like an inch into this is where the little fireball comes and makes that little turn.
Yeah, I guess that's getting into a lot of like just what do you need?
This
that
feels
for?
very try hard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's never a situation where you're gonna be like, I need to know that exactly.
I will say, don't do it. Just don't do it.
Yeah, probably.
Because if
don't.
you show up to one of my tournaments like that, and I find out you're doing that, you will just get DQ'd.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with it.
I would be like, here, use these blank tools.
No, you don't even get that.
Now you just gotta go.
you just
You don't have to go. You just can't win anything.
That's fair. That's fair.
You can play our games.
Any other suggestions in terms of how to do your measuring more efficiently or more rules accurately?
I mean, if you're really trying to be rules accurate, like you would place your measurement tool every time you're moving, which I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I don't
if,
do it either.
If you want to be by the book, then be by the book. I mean, like for TTS, well, even TTS, I'll pick them up.
Yeah.
And like just put them if it's an obvious movement, but if there's any doubt if they can't make it, just use your rulers.
When in doubt, pull it out.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's always good advice.
Well, the other thing too is I think to make your measurements as accurate as possible, you want to be as close to the table as you can get, right? Because people will do the like I peer over it and kind of,
and sometimes that's unavoidable.
Yeah, sometimes it is, but
yes,
that reminded me of a question. Can you, if you're trying to move something, like can you move terrain to get it out of the way to make a measurement?
I do that sometimes, but you want to make sure to mark it.
Yeah, you
right.
need to make sure to mark it. And again, you can always call a judge, and the judge will move the terrain or do whatever.
Yeah. If
judge,
it's like a close movement,
yeah,
call a judge.
I remember at LVO when Vince was trying to get his like grunts onto a point that like DeLuca had surrounded by like all of his models. Like he had Magneto, Apex. Like he had like 4 models all around the researcher, and Vince was trying to figure out if he could get because he dropped grunts out and then did a fury spender, and he wanted to see if the movement could get the grunts into the range of the objective to score, because the grunts were the only healthy characters, so they would have contested it no matter what. And so he had to actually Omnis came out and like they literally like marked off every model and moved them all, and then saw if he could put the grunts in there.
I don't even know how you can tell though.
It was
if you're moving the model off, you know where the one side is, but you don't know where the inside curve is. And if you're trying to fit them on the inside curve and you're removing the model, like how do you tell if it's on the inside?
I don't remember
overlapping the inside curves.
I don't remember how he did it. I don't remember how they did it, but I know it was like, it was a lot of ominous, just like marking models.
I'd be like, you put a finger on this base.
Yeah,
you put a finger on this base.
It was
you
a
put
lot
a finger
of
on
that.
this base.
It was
You
a
put a
lot.
finger on this base.
There's a lot of that.
All right, I'm gonna drop this guy in there.
It was definitely all of that.
How in the world was that not the game being streamed?
I don't know. Like the streams were always kind of, I don't want to say random, but you know what I mean. Like
that would have been a game that the stream should not allow comments.
Okay.
The kind of comments he got about CGR on the table at the same time with another CGR.
CGR 6.
I mean, let's be honest. All games should be the ones where they don't allow comments.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Well, and when you're on stream too in an event, there's always that little bit more pressure just to like make sure you don't mess stuff up or like.
Yeah. I mean,
he disagrees.
I just kind of I guess I don't know. I tunnel vision a little bit at the table. I kind of forget about.
You're the perfect personality type to play a game on stream because you just zone everything else out anyway.
I really do. Like once I get there and start playing, I just like I'm not thinking about people watching or the judge or the camera or anything. I just think I'm in my head, just trying to think of the stuff to do.
I am the exact opposite. I just melt like a puddle if I was doing something like that.
Yeah, I always try to be like, I gotta make sure my stuff's right, so I'm not just like, because you don't want to be accused of like cheating or doing something, or because people on stream will be like, I did the thing.
That's the thing, yeah.
Yeah,
like you do realize that you commenting on the stream and whoever's commentating or watching it at the actual event is gonna be like, oh, that was 17 comments ago. That was 6 minutes ago. I can't go back and redo anything.
Yeah. Well, there's so much more going on in a player's head than someone watching the game.
Yeah, I can believe that.
I mean, the people watching can speculate what the moves are, but they're probably not thinking about it on the level that the player is. Sometimes that can be an advantage for the player. Sometimes it's bad because they tunnel vision a little bit and they don't see a play that's more efficient. yeah, I mean, it's like anything. Backseat players, drivers, whatever.
Yeah.
They're gonna see stuff that the players don't, or even sometimes the judges don't. That's just kind of the nature.
Okay, any other kind of closing thoughts about measurements, both kind of the rules of the measuring tools and the etiquette of it?
I would say the biggest thing is to like try to build a dialogue with your opponent. Don't sit and be silent. Like if you're like, hey, I don't think you measured that right, you need to be like, I don't think you measured that right. Can we remeasure that? Like, don't be afraid. I don't think you want to try to shy away from like potentially like offending your opponent or whatever. Like, you just have to be you just have to take it and say, okay, I'll remeasure it, rather than trying to get into an argument about missing
Q-tip.
measurement.
Quit taking it personally.
Yeah.
Well, you can announce your intention too.
Yeah.
When you're doing something. Like, my intention is to be contesting this, or outside of contesting this, or whatever.
And that's usually, I mean, I think that's the more you do that, the better in just about anything. The more you're talking, probably the better the game's going to flow anyway.
Yeah.
Well, and intention is really good too, because, I mean, we have all played models get bumped, things get moved.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you're like, I swear I put that model within range 1, and then all of a sudden it's not. And you're like, how did that happen? And then sometimes you go back and you just go, okay, well, I intended to be it there, and that was where we were measuring from. So
right.
You just kind of go, okay, well, be in range 1.
Yeah, like I said, Q-tip, quit taking it personally, and don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah,
it's
definitely
not that hard.
Yeah, definitely don't be afraid.
Okay.
Call a judge too.
Don't let your opponent bully you in situations. Like,
if they're trying to bully you, the odds are they think that the judge is not going to rule in their favor.
yes.
And that also can...
Or they're just a jerk.
Yeah,
too.
or they're just a jerk.
You know what happens.
Yeah.
I've got one other thing. If they've made it this far, I'm going to give some of my secret sauce. So, when you're pushing or throwing, when you put that template down and you pick the model up to move it, if you clip something, that throw or push stops.
Yes.
You can't readjust your angle to rethrow or repush. That can really screw your plans. Don't do that.
This feels like something said with experience.
I guess, going back though, that's something I do see people do though.
Mm-hmm.
They will be like, okay, that happened at the Big Beef Beatdown. I let my opponent do that. Readjust. I'm like, he's gonna hit the dumpster now. He's like, oh, okay, and then I let him do it. Whatever. But you're not supposed to do that. But here's the secret sauce. If you're pushing or throwing a large base, you put your range ruler next to your movement tool, and that is the exact width of a large base.
So your range,
So you have a movement tool and then the range tool next to it.
just side by side.
Side by side, not overlapping at all. That is so. If you were to take two range tools and put a movement tool between them, that is the exact width of a large base.
Okay.
If you take a movement tool and you put the range tool exactly
Flat with one side.
what is that? If both sides are flush,
Mhm.
And you center a small base model on the movement tool, the width of the base is going to go out to the edge of the range tool. And then a medium base, if this one's the hardest one, if you take the range tool and you move it halfway to the side of the movement tool, so it's like half overlapping into the middle, and you put a medium base on the movement tool, the side of the base is going to be flush with the outside of that range tool. So what all that means is that when you are setting up your throw or push angle, if you take your measurement, if you take your rangefinder tool, which is legal because you can have one of each, and you put it appropriately, where like based on the base size of the model you're throwing or pushing, you should be able to clear the piece of terrain or the model that you're throwing past without clipping them, and have a very, very accurate way to do that.
So in other words, you're making sure that if you're doing a push or a throw, you're not going to clip something and actually sabotage what you're doing.
Correct.
Yeah, and you can do that. The easy way is you could just take the tool and go, okay, the tool's down, and then you take like the range 1 and you just measure to whatever you're trying not to hit. And then if you're outside of it, then you're like, okay, good, my path will work.
Yeah, like I'll put the range tool down. I'll socket the range tool and then kind of like pivot it like a clock hand with the range tool to where like I'm kind of like barely clearing the model or the terrain that I'm trying to throw past, and that's usually good enough because it's very like I don't even think there's a millimeter difference in any of those measurements. They're like very spot on. I don't know if that was intentional with the design, but I just found that out like randomly one night when I was messing around with the tools, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. But it's probably just like good common knowledge to have if you stuck around this long, because not many people are doing it, but it's a very helpful thing to have.
That's why you go 90 minutes deep into a podcast. Okay. Anything else? Anything else we want to go over with regards to measurements, etiquette, anything like that?
Just communicate with your opponent. I mean, that's like the biggest thing.
I think that's kind of rule 1 of just about everything.
Yeah.
You would think.
Okay. Well, see, webheads, you stick around long enough, you get gems like that. So, before we let you go, I want to make sure to remind you, join the Patreon, patreon.com/Witty Banter, so you can get a chance to be involved and participate in the giveaway. In addition, if you're a member of the Patreon, we are going to be dropping the first of our bonus episodes, the first of our Wicked Banter episodes. So if you're a member of the Patreon, you are going to have that show up in your Patreon while you're listening to this episode. If you are not a Patreon member, give us a week and you're going to get a free shot to see what that bonus content sounds like. So everybody's going to get a free bite at the apple. But if you want to have more of that kind of scintillating content, in this case, what are we going to be doing for our bonus content?
Talking about a Dormammu roster?
Talking about a Dormammu roster. So if you want to learn how
Come
to
and get it, boys.
if you want to learn how to win LVO with Dormammu, stay tuned.
Secret sauce.
Stop it! I'm marketing here.
I'm sorry, Dormammu's the best.
Dude, him and Shadow King, best
He's
friends.
the best 8 threat.
He is the best 8 threat.
He's the best 8 threat.
Join us on the Patreon. Follow us on the socials. Witty
Only
Banter.
one, but you know.
Thanos likes some words.
Well, Thanos technically isn't an 8 threat.
Thanos is the 6th threat.
Yeah, he's
Put Infinity Stones on Dormammu. Buckle up, Spanky.
Yes.
Follow us on the socials, Witty Bantercast. Email us, wittybantercast@gmail.com. Rate us, review us, give us feedback. We are 4 episodes into this. We want to learn how to get better, and we want to hear from you about it. Other than that, we will see you next time when we're going to be giving away Shadow King. Or somebody else, more than likely.
obviously not Shadow King.
Hey.
That's the most expensive box. I can't fault someone for taking it.
It's fair.
I mean, Xavier's pretty good.
That's fair.
Xavier's pretty good. Yeah. Leadership is-
Until next time, then, be good, webheads.